7 over. Target is down. Nice shot, Lieutenant.
Now stand aside, worthy adversary.
'Tis but a scratch.
A scratch? Your arm's off.
No, it isn't.
Well, what's that then?
Yo, what is up guys, this is TyrantX1 here, and welcome to another game review. This time I am reviewing Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, the fourth main game in the franchise and the first Call of Duty game to step away from the World War II setting and take place in the present day. The story begins with the emergence of a new terrorist organization known as the Ultra-Nationalists, who have started to cause trouble around the Middle East and the Caucasus region. So, the combination of the British SAS and the United States Army must subdue this enemy before they start to cause bigger problems. Now, COD 4 continued on what COD 3 was doing, where you had a specific amount of characters that you would pretty much fight alongside with throughout the campaign until the very end of the game, where things got a little bit hectic, and it decides to continue with that. Even though there is less characters compared to COD 3, because a lot of the characters were from different allied forces, this time it only focuses on the British SAS and the Americans' United States Army, and there is a decent amount of characters that you see, like Captain Price, Gaz, Sergeant Griggs, Macmillan, who are all pretty interesting characters. But at this point in time, Call of Duty was just starting to get a hand on when it comes to making good campaigns, and COD 4 did a very good campaign. From what I've seen, despite its length not being too long when you play it on normal, about 5 to 6 hours. But then again, I've been playing this game for over 10 years now, so I pretty much know the game from the back of my hand. Probably back in the day, it probably took me a bit longer, but nevertheless, this game does a very good job at trying to present the modern problems that the world is facing. Back with the World War II games, it was kind of just showing the perspective that we have seen and heard from old recordings and the stories of the soldiers who fought that war. But this game decides to try and show the relevance of the modern situations and wars that have been going on at the time, much like with Afghanistan and Iraq and what was happening there. And this game does actually kind of present it very well with the situations and areas that you are put in the since there are a certain amount of missions where you are put in the Middle East, so it has a very modernistic feel, even though it's not really sort of the same situation, since the enemy is pretty much a mixture of a terrorist organization compiled of Saudi Arabians and Russians. But that kind of does make a lot of sense considering now. But it really does have a very good connection with the modern era and what it's trying to put out there. And that it also says technology is also kind of a bit of a big danger too, since there are nukes involved, as always with modern games, but this game shows the devastation up close with how destructive this power can be, especially in the one moment of the game where you are trying to escape like a whole battle situation and then a whole nuke goes off, and then you actually see up close just how devastating the destruction, the aftermath is, and then pretty much dying straight afterwards. This game decides to up the ante a lot bigger than any other Call of Duty before. Other Call of Duties was just simple missions of like fighting the enemies and then you'd have a few like friendly characters die. This game does that, but it does it times 10. You pretty much go through the campaign. There's about 20 missions, pretty much, if you discount that whole nuke aftermath mission, which is just like 5 or so minutes, if not less. And yeah, pretty much from the get-go, you're pretty much trying to stop the Ultra-Nationalists from causing a lot of chaos in certain areas like the Middle East and the Caucasus regions. And then you learn that they are trying to nuke the US because of a grudge this guy had because he got his arm shot off, which is a little hilarious. But speaking of the villains, this was the first Call of Duty game where they had a serious villain, like Imran Sakayev and his goons, like the other guy that he has in Saudi Arabia, like the little uprising he has, and his own son. You pretty much try to take out these guys one by one as you try to get closer to stopping the world having a big-ass crisis. But what I really love about this game is just like how coherent it is. You have 3 acts. Well, you start off with a prologue, which pretty much sets up like a sort of training simulator so you can get used to the whole game. It sets up some of the characters. Then you have the 3 acts you play through, which is the main story and pretty much all the stuff that goes on. Then you have an epilogue, which is sort of like, I'm not exactly sure what the meaning of it was, but it was a fun epilogue. But that just has nothing to do with the story whatsoever. It's just something that was thrown in there, but it was nice to have. But the story is very serious, much more serious compared to other Call of Duties. There is a lot of, like, at least it isn't entirely serious because the characters you're with, they do have some odd jokes, well, odd funny jokes here and there, which is nice to have to like sort of get past some of the more serious moments and have a little bit of fun time. But these guys, it has a mixture of jokes and seriousness, so it's not all fun and games. There is a lot of serious attitudes thrown around. Yeah, there's a lot of big moments. I mean, this does show a lot of big things. Not only do you have nuke being set off, you also have, like, you're being shown public executions, like, you have little guys committing suicide right in front of you. You also, like, go, at some point in the game, you go, like, sort of back in time to the 1990s, trying to do, like, an assassination attempt on the main villain as you crawl through the wastelands of the Chernobyl incident, which was actually very, like, the whole game really, the campaign really goes all out with, like, the way things are in the modern world. It's like, it just shows that the World War II and World War One, they're not the only conflicts that are really bad. The modern era also has its situations, and I really like how interactive, and it shows you just, it's just in your face. It's the campaign with COD 4. It's very well done, very coherent, very well done characters. The villain, despite this being its first attempt, was okay. I've seen far worse in the franchise or other games, so this one wasn't too bad, to be honest. And yeah, this campaign is incredibly well put together. There's like a whole bunch of different situations and stuff going on, and yeah, as I'll explain in a minute, like, there's certain things that it does. Now, what I really like about COD 4 is the fact that it tries to build more upon the interactivity that COD 3 tried to offer, which is like stuff like planting bombs, getting in tussles with Nazis, while COD 4 tries to up that ante by like times 100 or so. I mean, having a nuke blown up in your face and crashing down, surviving your injuries, and then succumbing to them along with the radiation that's being put into the air isn't exactly a fun experience, but it's also a very dramatic experience. This game tries to make a lot of instances in the game, like a lot of the missions, very interactive and in your face. And I like the variation of missions it also offers. Like, for example, there's some missions, or there's like one mission where you're in a helicopter firing down the enemy with a grenade launcher. There's also an entire mission dedicated to being in an AC-130 aircraft, like giving support fire for your friendlies on the ground. That's a very innovative mission in my eyes, compared to anything that COD really has offered since, to be honest. This is probably one of the most innovative missions you ever see in a COD game. And hands down to it, it still holds up to this day, compared to most Call of Duties we've seen in the future. There's even like the missions in the 1990s where you're literally crawling through the wastelands of Chernobyl in a ghillie suit with like trying to be all stealth and everything. That was a very intense and suspenseful couple of missions. They were really good. Just basically trying to get to your like viewpoint where you could assassinate your target, just trying to get there was a journey itself. And the moment where you're going across this open field without being spotted by enemies being supported by tanks, that's a very intense situation, and it's probably one of the best moments you'll ever see in a COD game, like now and since. I mean, hell, even Modern Warfare 2, being one of my favorite, has some difficulty getting up to like standards like this. And there's even moments where you're just trying to like stop a hijacking in a plane, which kind of shouts out a little bit to 9/11 situation, but yeah. There's even like a training simulator for a mission that you're about to do. Hell, there's even a moment in the game where you're literally riding in a car throughout a city, seeing it fall to the ultra-nationalists before your own public execution. What COD 4 really tries to do is to give you an interactive experience, and it can be pretty terrifying with how insane the world is, considering this is set in the modern era, in the present day. And yeah, the way the world is probably very similar to this, and it's kind of frightening when you think about it, when you look back on this game, considering how dangerous the world has gotten. But yeah, COD 4 really tries to be interactive. That's its main thing. It tries to tell a very suspenseful, dramatic story with a bunch of characters who offer you some funny dialogue, but also are very serious at the same time. I mean, hell, there's also a mission where you're literally racing against the clock to try and stop some nukes falling on the US. I mean, yeah, this game really does keep you on your toes throughout the whole thing. And I really like how there's moments where it's just like you're shooting bad guys 1 minute, being in a plane, giving friendly support, trying to go through the wasteland somewhere, trying to stealth your way through it, trying to battle off an armada of enemies, and then trying to go up against the clock to stop some nukes. Yeah, this game really does give you a very interactive story, a very dramatic, suspenseful story, and it's definitely one that's going to probably be remembered for a very long time. Now I have to talk about the difficulty of this game, because holy shit is it difficult when you play this game on Veteran. COD 4 is possibly the hardest Call of Duty game I've ever played on the hardest difficulty. Hands down. I still can't even do the epilogue mission on Veteran. I've tried it, almost got there a few times, but still haven't done it. The only achievement I still haven't got in the game. I have completed all the other missions on Veteran, but yeah, those missions can be fucking difficult, that's the thing. Like 2 missions in particular, the one where you're pretty much having to escape from your assassination attempt of Zakhaev, and that's not easy when you have to defend your wounded comrade. And then of course you have a mission where you have to race against the clock to stop nukes from falling on the US. Those 2 missions in particular are just abusively difficult. There's gonna be a lot of trial and error just so you can get to a checkpoint, and it's insane. Yeah, and it also doesn't help with how well improved the enemy AI is. The enemy in this game, even though it's just normal soldiers again, there's a lot of them. I mean, the game no longer does the thing that the World War II games did, which is throw infinite amount of enemies at you. There is some instances where that does sort of happen a little bit, but they're not infinite. You just basically have to do a few defense segments, and then that's pretty much it. But the enemies in this game are ruthless. You don't want to mess with these guys, as they will tear you to shreds. Even if you can get close up to a melee, they will just batter you. And also there's the new Last Stand ability. That is a perk in the multiplayer, but it's also the enemy also do. It's you think you've killed them, but then they sort of get up a little bit and get their pistol out and shoot you. That on Veteran can be a piece of shit to experience. And yeah, then it's also the enemies throwing infinite rocket launchers at you too can be a bit of a pain. And yeah, the friendly AI, once again, you have your select mortal and immortal AIs, but they're not, I keep thinking they are good distractions for the enemy, but the way the game works, the enemy are always mainly going to be concentrating their fire at you. So even if you do have friendlies around, they're either going to get picked off easily, or you have your 1 or 2 immortal teammates who are just there, who can't really help with shit at all. And so yeah, the combination of really intelligent AI and a difficult campaign, this is one of those experiences where you're going to find a challenge that is a proper challenge, and it's not a fun one. Well, let's not say fun, because this isn't Dark Souls or Cuphead difficult wise, but it's still difficult in a way that it's just going to make your blood boil to a point where you just don't want to play anymore until you come back months later, finding a way to get past a certain point, and then you do it. Yeah, this game really does offer challenge in insurmountable proportions. Now there is a few other things that the campaign does offer. The graphics. Now I didn't play this game on the remastered version because fuck that, I'm not buying Infinite Warfare just to get a remastered version of a game that I really like. So luckily I waited, and eventually I was able to play this game on the Xbox One when it got backwards compatible. And honestly, looking at the graphics, considering this game is more than 10 years old now, it still looks very good. It still holds up to this day. True, there is some like background textures that don't really look great anymore, but it still holds up very well. I mean, like all the locations you go to. I mean, there's only a couple of locations you go to really, which is the Middle East and the Caucasus regions, but it still looks very nice, the way the game looks, and the weapons, the style of the characters, the gear they wear, it still looks really cool. True, I would have wanted to play this game on the remastered version, but I still have the original version and it still looks good. The graphics still hold up nicely, apart from a couple of things, but it's not really something that looks terrible or something that's worth whining about. Sound effects, the noises the guns make are great. They sound a lot different compared to what you see in the World War II games. They sound realistic, which makes sense considering a lot of the guns in this game obviously are available in the real world. So it's not going to be hard to record the way they sound. The voice acting is it's standard, but it's still pretty good. It holds up well for like the view of a soldier in the modern era. There's even like collectibles you can find in this game, like little laptops you'll find, and I think collecting those is what helps unlock certain cheats. Like there is actually cheats in this game. This is a time when cheats were still around, not much anymore, but they aren't. They're not button activated. They're just like sort of you go in the options and you find the cheats. There's some interesting cheats there that are kind of funny. Like when you shoot some enemies and when they die they turn into a bunch of tires, or you have infinite ammunition, or you can make it slow-mo, which actually can be pretty funny. But yeah, it's kind of funny to see a game that still has cheats, and the collectibles are something that's worth finding since it's something to get. So yeah, considering the game still looks great. Sound effects are brilliant. The soundtrack as well, a lot different compared to your previous Call of Duties. Like Call of Duty 3, the main theme was a lot more. It sounded correct for the era that it was set in, World War II. It had a very much more victorious tone. Where COD 4 it feels darker. It's not as in your face compared to COD 3. But it has a more serious tone to it, and that's what I really like about it, and it really goes with the game having a serious tone. And I think probably one of the most impressive parts of the soundtrack is got to be in the Aftermath mission where you're just seeing the nuke, like the Aftermath. It's just the wish, like the hearing the sounds of like the wind and everything, and you can even hear like the creepy laughter of children somewhere, and it's downright terrifying. And then you also have the Chernobyl missions. The music there is a very somber tone as you realize that people used to live in this place and they're all practically gone because of the explosion and everything and the radioactivity that's going on. So yeah, the soundtrack really does shows the very dramatic experience that you find from this game. Now let's talk about the mechanics of the gameplay. Now there is a certain amount of weaponry in this game. There's going to be a lot more different stuff you'll find here than you'll find in previous Call of Duty, since now you have modern weaponry. So there's a select amount of assault rifles, SMGs, LMGs, sniper rifles, shotguns, pistols, a few rocket launchers here and there. You also have like your usual frag grenades, but now you also have more special grenades like stun grenades, flashbangs, smoke grenades. You have those which are more for a tactical sense of point. You also have C4, which can be very helpful against a large cluster of enemies or planting on vehicles. And also, instead of meleeing with your weapon, the butt of your weapon, now you actually have a knife, and it can be very quick and quite precise too. A lot of the weapons perform very well. Assault rifles are always pretty much going to be your basic primary weapon. Pretty much you start off with a assault rifle in most missions, but each of the weapons of their class do work. Although LMGs are kind of very inaccurate. They're very spray-like weapons in this game compared to future Call of Duties where they'll become a lot more accurate. In this game, LMGs, especially in the multiplayer, are very spray and pray type weapons. Though the thing is, looking back on this game, there's a considerable lack of weapons when you think about it. There's only 2 shotguns, only 3 LMGs, and only 2 of those are available in the campaign, so you're not going to find a lot of those. There's a lot of concentration on the pistols, sniper rifles, SMGs, and assault rifles, but there's a considerable lack towards some other weapon types. And when you think about it, seeing the amount of weapons there is, the options that are available for you throughout the missions and the multiplayer, they're kind of repetitive, really. Like, most of the time you're going to have an assault rifle and something else, and that's pretty much it. Though it is nice that you can put camos on the weapons now, and you also have attachments, like grenade launcher, the red dot sights, silencers, so you have a bit more weapons in your toolbox to use against your enemies in this game. So pretty much you can now outfit your weapon with more things. And there's also a few other nice gadgets you'll see, like night vision, which you probably won't be using all that often at all in multiplayer, and it's only rarely used in the campaign for only specific points. But it's there, and it's nice to see that sort of thing. The gameplay is a lot more fluid. It doesn't feel as stiff compared to previous Call of Duties, especially since now you can sprint. As in previous Call of Duties you couldn't sprint, but in this one you finally can. It was weird. I still find it weird how you can sprint in COD 3's multiplayer. But nevertheless, the gameplay, the way it feels when you're firing your gun and everything, the way you move, it feels very like you're there or something like that. It's very fluid. And obviously, like in COD 3, you can throw grenades back as well, since in this game, the enemies can be quite insane with their grenade throwing. And it's just ridiculous. Probably not as ridiculous as the next Call of Duty, but still ridiculous nonetheless. And it's a fucking pain when it's on Veteran, when you see countless enemies throwing grenades, which is absolutely ridiculous. But overall, the mechanics of the weapons, like also the special gadgets and everything you have, and everything, the way your character operates and all that, it's very well done. It's squeaky clean everything. Now let's talk about the multiplayer. Now this is before Call of Duty got absolutely ridiculous and stupid with its multiplayer, and in COD 4's day it was a lot more simplistic. You had about 5 classes to choose from where you can customize, with weapons, special grenades, and different types of perks. And the perks offered the player some kind of an advantage in the battlefield, like longer sprint duration, more ammunition, more bullet damage, more bullet penetration, immunity from radar, which can be very helpful for snipers, and these are very handy to have, but they're not overpowered. Well, maybe Martyrdom and Last Stand, which can be kind of stupid. But yeah, the perks offer some sort of advantage, and it kind of gives the battles or matches a bit more a diversive outcome. Like the teams, there's no clear advantage of who will win apart from skill and knowledge of the maps and the game modes themselves. And there is actually quite a decent amount of game modes that obviously have stood the test of time, as you've seen in other Call of Duty games like Team Deathmatch, Sabotage, Headquarters, Search and Destroy, Domination, and even in this game we had Cage Match, which is basically 1v1s. So it looks like they brought back something in World War II, and that hasn't been done for a very long time in Call of Duty, which is kind of surprising. And each of these game modes do play very well, especially with the different amount of classes you could choose from for the different situations, which also depends on the map you play on and the game mode you choose from. And speaking of the maps, there is over 16 maps that you can play on in this game, which is actually a very decent amount, and each of these maps feel different. The maps these days in Call of Duty games don't feel special, they don't feel they have any variety, they just have a specific layout and that's it. Whereas in COD 4 there's a lot of variation in the paths you can take around the map to sort of take out your enemies. There's just a lot of things you can do. Like most maps in Call of Duty these days have a specific route you can take. You can go down the middle, left, or right. Whereas in COD 4, there's different variation. You have larger maps, you have smaller maps, there's more open landscapes, and there's more close quarter areas in some of them. So there's a lot more things to do and see in the COD 4 maps and places to go. I mean, there's even some some maps have underground sections where you can just completely flank your enemy. Sure, you see that in some future COD games, but this is obviously where it originates, and it's very nice to see how variative the maps are in this game, and it gives the multiplayer longevity, especially considering there is a ranking system where you can go up to level 55 before you decide to become a prestige. Obviously, that's been around for a very long time now, and obviously had become the norm, but this was when it was very simplistic. And there's also challenges in the game that you can do to complete, which gives you like extra XP, and so the multiplayer actually does offer you quite a lot, despite it being pretty simplistic. And I like that. That's what makes COD 4 one of the best Call of Duty games there is, compared to the later games. It's simple, yet fun. It offers you a decent amount of content without stealing a lot of money from you. To finish this off, there is also like an arcade mode in here, which you can play on the campaign missions to earn points, and it can show up on the leaderboard like against other friends you have online. But that's pretty much it. I do wish there was like an extra mode in this game. That would be nice to play, to give it a bit more juice or something like that. But other than that, COD 4 is a very, very well done game. It's pretty much one of the best Call of Duties to date, I think, alongside Modern Warfare 2. COD 4 has stood the test of time, pretty much, and it's something I have really loved about this game. So, I'm going to give Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare... So, that is my review of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, the beginning of the golden age for the franchise before the eventual downfall it has in the future. But this is just when things were getting good. So, hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Leave a like down below, subscribe, comment on what you think of the game, comment what other games you think I could do, and share this video on social media and all that, and I shall see you guys in the next random video.
Recruit your operators from among the world's foremost elite. Borders and protocols are irrelevant. We must be the shield that safeguards the civilized world from those who wish to do it harm. No matter how or where our enemies strike, no matter what defense they cower behind, Team Rainbow must stand ready.